of this great science, we need to learn the alphabet. And pretty Dave Jode, if you could pull up an alphabet, I'd like to take a look at that real quick. We're not going to get too into it, but I just want to make sure everyone knows what it is I'm assuming there's beginners here. So this is what it looks like. And when I learned Gurmukhi, I was taking a 40-day teacher training course in Pomona, California, Guru Gobind Singh Shakti Sadan. And it was announced one day that tomorrow we're going to learn the Gurmukhi alphabet. I said, we're going to learn what? They said the Gurmukhi alphabet. I said, oh, what's that? I said, well, you know that Japji thing we read in the morning? Those are the Guru's words, and that's called Gurmukhi. And so it's not like a real requirement, but we want you to know about it. So we're going to teach it. So the next day, our teacher brought up this alphabet, and she said, okay, well, here's how we do this. We just have to memorize each letter. And so she went through each line, and one by one, we memorized the thing. So if you go down to line number 2, you see those figures there. And the first letter is a K, the second's a hard K, the third's a G, the fourth is a hard G, and then a nasal thing, which we won't talk about just yet. So she would start off and say, okay, and the way the Punjabis say it is kaka, and then kaka, and then gaga, and then gaga, and then nyangya, which we won't, of course, get into just yet. And so you just repeat those until you memorize them. And I like to put like a card below the lines above it, or to the side of it rather, to memorize each letter and go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until these become all very familiar to you. So step number 1 is to memorize these letters so you can properly speak them. Now, probably the most unique thing about this alphabet is down on line number 4, because those are all what's called retroflex letters. And that means you twist your tongue backwards in your mouth. And when you hear Yogi Bhajan give lectures, sometimes you hear somebody, you take the tape. And it's always like, what is he doing there? What is that? Why does that sound different? It's because Punjabi has the same alphabet as Gurmukhi, and he's doing a retroflex T when he speaks like that. So those are different, and that's where the beauty of the nod starts to come in a big way, because they're so much different from what we're used to as Westerners. So that fourth line would read tanka, which is tata, and it's a very subtle language in that, like for that letter, no air comes out of the mouth. So if you put your hand in front of your mouth, you say tanka, you would not feel any air coming out of your mouth. It's all tanka, tata, right? And then the next one, tata, is a harder, like double the strength T sound that's also retroflect. And the next one is a D sound, then a hard D, and then an N sound, but a backwards tongue N sound. So charan, like gur charan, it's a nana. It's not just a gur charan. It's not a regular N. And that's what nod yoga is. It's the subtlety of hitting these meridian points. What is there, 84 of them in our mouth? And Gurbani and mantra are all perfectly designed scientific yogas to elevate ourselves. It stimulates the hypothalamus, the thalamus, that then affects the pineal and pituitary glands, the seat of the soul, the pineal gland. And this Gurmukhi alphabet, chanted properly with the mantra and the Gurbani, will lead you to elevated states of consciousness through the recitation of these things. Pretty Dave Joe, would you please pull up the Mool Mantra, and let's take a look at that for a minute. So once you've memorized these letters, and by the way to do this is to, Sadhasat Simran has done a wonderful job with a thing called The Joy of Gurmukhi. So Google it, Joy of Gurmukhi, and Sada Sat Simran just explains very beautifully the science of Nad Yoga. And of course, his Punjabi is perfect, so he's a great source for you to learn Gurmukhi from. And you want to learn it right, you want to learn it from a good teacher. Another person is Rupinder Kaur from Amritsar. And I understand she's a very, very good teacher. A few friends of mine have commented that just how really great she is at that. And plus, she's Punjabi, so it's her natural language and alphabet. And I never actually did that myself. I learned from a lady named Sri Sadnakar after I learned the basics. She sat down with me and we went over things. But if I had to do it again, I probably would have learned from a Punjabi because it's their natural language. So I encourage you to find whatever source you can to learn this Gurmukhi alphabet as good as you can. Some people struggle with it, some people it's easy, but eventually you do get to it. And the key to reading Gurmukhi is just to read and speak what you see. And I find that with people, there's a tendency to, they start to take it on and they bring their own, somehow their subconscious mind comes in and infiltrates it and makes it inaccurate. So you just got to concentrate on reading what is in front of you. So once you read your Gurmukhi alphabet and you've memorized the letters, then you start to learn how to put words together. So in front of us is the Mool Mantra, and the second word is an S and a T. And when you put those together, there's called a mukta, which is in between those two consonants. So the S and T becomes sat. You just put a mukta in between those. So you start to learn just the single syllable words after you learn the alphabet. So the next word then is nam. So it's sat nam. The next one is a three-letter, a three-syllable, another three-syllable, etc. Then you get down to gur, a G and a U and a rara, which is an R, gur, and then Jaap. So bit by bit, you simplify and you just start to learn all these two-syllable things, and then you jump into a three-syllable. It's like Purakh, or Nirvad, or Karta. And you need to do that with a teacher because they're there to walk you through it. I was lucky to have a lady in the ashram who thought I had something going on there, and she said, I will teach you for 31 minutes a day for 40 days, the Banis. So once I had learned the alphabet and did my work there and then started to put the words together, then we pulled out the nickname and we started to read together. And she would sit with me through every single word and correct where I needed to be corrected and encourage where I did good. So we'd start very slow. Ik, Onkar, Sat, Nam, Karta, Purakh. And we'd just go through it line by line. And within 40 days, I had read all of my Banis, Japji, Shabad Hazari, Jaap Sahib, Reharas, Anand Sahib, Kirtan Swela. So we had done all of those, and about halfway through, pretty soon I was correcting her on what she was teaching me, and we both knew that our lessons at this point in time were probably done, which was great. So it didn't take me 40 days. It doesn't really take that long. You just have to have a good teacher who's willing to sit down with you and do it. So that's where Rupinder Kaur comes in. She does it professionally. She will sit with you. She'll go one-on-one with you. She'll teach you exactly how to say these things. And you'll kind of have an awakening because you'll realize that you've been saying mantras wrong for years because so many of them have these subtleties that we're not aware of unless you know how to read the Gurmukhi alphabet. So I got a little bit ahead of myself. So I'm going to now kind of back away and pick it up where I left off. And I want to introduce Harijot Singh to you. He's my nephew, my brother's son. He's really good at this stuff. The history of the Guru's Gurbani, how I wanted to bring him on because he told me the story of how Guru Gobind Singh Ji wrote Jaap Sahib, when he wrote it, what was going on at the time, etc. He's just got all this great knowledge. So I thought he'd be just wonderful to share the history of this Bani and that. So Harijot Singh Ji, would you please take over from here and let people know what's happening?
Thank you, Chacha Ji. Chacha, for anybody who doesn't know, it doesn't mean uncle, it means the uncle who is the younger brother of your father. Because there's another word for the older brother of your father, which is Taya. So he's my Chacha.
Right.
So when talking about Bonnies, I wanted to take this all the way back to, by the way, I work at SeekNet. I've been making stories there. So it's a long time passion of mine to, I've always just kind of naturally collected spiritual stories of different types. And I feel very blessed that I continue. I've been with SeekNet for over 10 years. We make, if you go to seeknet.com/stories, we make a bunch of audio stories for children. So that's my project. So for me, the subject of talking about Jaap Sahib is a gigantic subject, because we have to talk about what is Bani. And we all know, I think sometimes the easiest way to talk about it is to compare it to the Judeo-Christian language, which is, we all know that John 1:1 says, in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So we know that words are important. Even to use the word word is not sufficient. The original translation from Greek was logos. It's a bigger concept than that. So when we're talking about doing Mul Mantra, it's not sufficient to say that these are Gurmukhi words or Punjabi words. These are teachings. Even saying teachings is not sufficient, because what is the Mul Mantra describing? Mul Mantra is describing what does Ik Onkar mean. So from Ik Onkar, the whole Mul Mantra is describing what is that. Then the whole Japji is describing, well, what exactly does the Mul Mantra mean? Then the whole Sri Guru Granth Sahib is describing what does Japji mean. So this means, that's called holographic. When you have a picture within a picture within a picture, and it just kind of goes infinitely in, that's a holographic item. And so these teachings work on so many different layers, because if you read them, you can understand a literal meaning from them. If you recite them, you get a physiological effect from them. They have a massive historic significance, because they're connecting us. These are the words that were spoken by these enlightened masters. So they're evolving us. So this is multidimensional. Japji is a multidimensional thing. And given with the lifestyle of everything else the Guru's taught, these are tools that help with the entire evolution of the species. So doing things like Japji Sahib and Jaap Sahib and reading from the Guru and all of these accompanying lifestyle things that we do, it's a species level evolutionary thing we're participating in. It's a hugely significant event. So Bonnie's, it's like you can take them as these are rituals that we have to do. You can take them as these are prayers that we have to do. These are extremely significant things that we are blessed to be able to be exposed to. That's the main thing I wanted to describe today. That Guru Nanak, okay, say Jesus. Jesus, the life story of Jesus is basically that he, there's some stories of him as a kid, and then age 12, 13, we kind of lose track of him. He shows up at the river, what's it called, Jordan, and age 30, and for 3 years he gives his main preachings. That's the whole Bible and all the parables, the whole New Testament, the whole Christian theology is all based off these 3 short years of the life of Jesus. And in 3 years, now 2000, based off those 3 years, we fast forward 2000 years later, there's hundreds and hundreds of denominations of Christians. There's billions of Christians. It's the dominant religion of the world. And it's based off these 3 simple years. And we know from history that the teachings of Jesus have been heavily contorted and heavily abused. The Spanish Inquisition, they took the man who taught to turn your other cheek, they decided we're going to kill everybody who doesn't adopt his religion. So you couldn't have a more hypocritical interpretation of what is Jesus talking about. So my idea is that the heavens have a massive council, and when such a people are requiring teachings, they go and send one of their masters, and they say, hey, we need somebody to go to Palestine. Hey, this guy, you can do it. You'll be called Jesus, and you got to teach them in really simple language and do parables and whatever. So he goes and he does a quick job. Then we find out there's a huge controversy with the teachings because nobody wrote down specifically what he said, and they edited it a couple hundred years later. Then they translated it, and God knows if the actual scholars who study the original Aramaic, they have a very different interpretation of what is his teachings than the generic Christian theology. So then they say, okay, the Dark Age has come. We need to solidify the teachings in such a way that it cannot be misinterpreted. And 3 years is not sufficient. We're going to send somebody for much longer. So the project of Guru Nanak is, we're going to send you and you're going to have 10 lifetimes. So not 3 years, but more than 200 years, you're going to come and you're going to give these teachings. So in the course of 200 years, the demonstration of how to live these teachings cannot be mistaken. And in the course of having 10 gurus, you have enough to understand that there's different ways and an evolution of living that even these enlightened masters themselves, they can't manifest all of these teachings in one simple lifetime. So doing Japji Sahib is a momentous thing. Guru Nanak is the light giver of the Kal Yuga, the dark age of spiritual ignorance. So Japji Sahib itself, there's so many examples in history where the gurus themselves recite Japji Sahib. When somebody passes away, they recite Japji Sahib. Every single morning, of course, everybody's doing Japji Sahib, among many other, practices and bani's. So Japji itself is sufficient for liberation. It cannot be understated how significant Japji is. And we all know Japji, and we've all done Japji. So then why does it take another hundreds and hundreds of years to create Jaap Sahib? And what is Jaap Sahib? In summary, Guru Gobind Singh, the 10th Guru, his entire project of being included in this lineage of Guru Nanak was that he was, I'm sure many people have heard of Rishi Dush Daman, but maybe some people have not heard of Rishi Dush Daman. A Rishi is like a wizard. It's a very significant, very powerful spiritual entity. And so this Rishi was meditating in the Himalaya mountains, and he attained such a state of merger with the divine that he started losing definition as an individual. And he's known as the one who defeats all the demons. So in the cosmic play, there's many entities battling with each other, and he is the great destroyer of the darkness of dark spiritual entities. And when he had achieved a victory over destroying a certain battle, then he came into the presence of the Divine One, who invoked him to come to earth in another reincarnation. So his first thought was, well, I've just been on this earth and I've now transcended it, and now I'm here in your presence, the divine presence. Why would I want to be born again, go through the whole pain and the whole hassle? I want to be here with you. And so Akal Purakh, it's written that Akal Purakh is who's speaking to him, God, the divine, showed him that there is pain on this earth and we need you to help with the pain on this earth. And you have two projects that you have to do. So I'm describing this in order to give an idea of what is Jaap Sahib. What is Jaap Sahib is a manifestation of all of what Guru Gobind Singh represents. And his mission and his dictate to be sent to earth was twofold. One was to destroy all the demons, to destroy tyranny itself, to destroy darkness itself. And two was to make the spiritual path flourish and to save the devotees. So he was to start the panth, or make the panth flourish, which is make the spiritual path of Dharma flourish, and he is to destroy all of the tyranny. So grow the Dharma and destroy the bad guys. So Japji gives you a sense of humility and gives you a sense of a spiritual sense of the divine. Jaap Sahib instills more of a warrior spirit. So one thing I just wanted to try to keep giving a bigger and bigger picture. There's so many things to talk about. There's so many ways to describe this. And one thing I like to tell people is that this Rishi, who was born as Guru Gobind Singh, the 10th Guru, even among the Gurus, it's interesting and unique in the sense that even Guru Nanak, who's this great being, he had a process of evolution that he had to remember that he was the enlightened being for this age. He had a kind of learning process that he had to go through. Guru Gobind Singh, it is said that he had zero lack of memory when he was born. There was no gap from being an infant or from being in the womb and being an infant. He didn't forget a second of his knowledge that he had attained as a rishi in his previous life. It was just a continuous flow that he just came into this new incarnation, and there was nothing missing on him. So even among the gurus, he's seen as this dynamo. He was prophesied by the previous gurus, and they said there's going to be such a guru. The 10th guru is going to be, he's just amazing. Even among the gurus, they were surprised, they were amazed at who he would be. So reading the words that he wrote is participating in his project. And what is his project? Is to elevate the entire vibration of the planet Earth, to evolve the human species, and to restore us back to a spiritual sense. These bodies are coming from a spiritual place. They're perfect words, and by reciting them, you're bringing this higher vibration onto Earth, and it's elevating the Earth itself. Once in the life of Guru Gobind Singh, his father was Guru Tegh Bahadur, who was also the reincarnation of a very high-level rishi. The 9th Guru, Guru Tegh Bahadur, passed away. He was killed, so he was a martyr amongst the Gurus. And so the executioner who cut the head off of the Guru, there was a massive crowd of people there, and amongst the crowd there had to have been some Sikhs. And so the executioner challenged the public and said, who amongst you is brave enough to claim the head of your Guru? And so the Sikhs who were present were not bold enough to say, I am a Sikh of the Guru Tegh Bahadur, and I want to do a proper rites to his body. And everybody was quiet. And so it was a little bit embarrassing, because even on a direct challenge, the Sikhs didn't have the courage to stand up at that moment. Then a massive storm broke out, and there was a bunch of chaos, and there was a bunch of wind and thunder and lightning, and somehow one of the Sikhs he carted the body away, and it's a whole story about how he brought the head to the 10th Guru. And when the 10th Guru heard this, he was, depending on which history you listen to, he was 9 years old or he was 13 years old. He heard this whole story, and he said, really, not a single Sikh would stand up and claim that he's a disciple of ours and would face the enemy with courage. And he said, I will take the gentle doves, these gentle pigeons who are Sikhs today, who have been instilled with this humility from the bodies that we have, and I will turn these pigeons into hawks. So his whole project, his whole purpose of life was to empower the spiritual people to take on a warrior spirit, because that's what it takes to fully imbibe these teachings and bring these higher vibrations to the earth. So he said, I will take sparrows and turn them into hawks. I've thrown out 3 different birds there. It doesn't really matter. I said doves, I said sparrows, I said pigeons. I think dove is a good way, because doves represent peace. I think that makes sense. And there's a later incident, and one of the links that we set in the resources is a fantastic history where they kind of go over a very simple way that Guru Gobind Singh described his teachings. So maybe not everybody has heard that we have the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib, and exactly equal to Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib is the Dasam Granth, is all of what Guru Gobind Singh wrote, all of what Guru Gobind Singh taught, and it's all compiled in one binding. It was always a bunch of different manuscripts, and it's been put in one volume, and that's all of his teachings. And so he described his teachings, his banis. A similar thing had happened where he was just talking about how we need to instill more fighting spirit amongst the Sikhs, and he said that the Siddhi Guru Granth, the Ad Granth, instills this sense of humility. And I will make such a writing that it will create a spirit of fighting. So when you're doing Jaap Sahib, you're participating in his legacy of spirit. And what is that spirit? It's the spirit of keep up and keep going and establish this, the court of the Guru. Many times it's written in the various Rehatnamas. Rehatnamas are the disciplines that are given to Sikhs by the Gurus, and they're usually written by people who are next to the Guru. So in the time of the 10th Guru, it was all about solidifying all this huge body of teachings that we have. And in order to contain all this massive spirit and energy and nectar that was overflowing in the community, there was lots of disciplines and rules that they started being instituted, because it was so much power, so much like light being emitted. It was just like you need as much power as you need as much discipline to contain it. So there's lots of things written about what we should do as Sikhs and what the Gurus were telling us to do. And one thing that pops up again and again and again is to do japa jap. So many people have written similar things. They say we should wake up in the Amrit Vela. Everybody will agree we should wake up in the Amrit Vela before the dawn. That's a very, of course, that's a central teaching of ours. And japa keeps being written again and again. And it refers to Japji Sahib and Jaap Sahib. So as I was saying before, that Japji is sufficient for liberation. It's the cornerstone. It's the foundation. If you're a Kundalini Yoga student, you do Japji. If you're a Buddhist, you also do Japji. Believe it or not, many Buddhists take it as a discipline to do Japji. Hindus do Japji. There's a very well-known Indian scholar and spiritual man named Rabindranath Tagore, and what he said, they had an interfaith council, and they said, we should have some kind of prayer, not a Buddhist prayer or a Christian prayer. We need a prayer that's like all religious prayers, all traditions. We need a universal prayer. And Tagore said, we already have that. Guru Nanak already created the entire humanity's prayer. That's called Japji. So Japji is the foundation for us. Japji is the beginning. It's the beginning and end. It's the cornerstone. And Jaap Sahib is also the cornerstone. We have two cornerstones. So if we do no other practices, Japji Sahib and Jaap Sahib, even one of the encouragements and one of the disciplines says to don't even eat food before you've done these two things. You should bathe and do Jap and Jaap. And if you can't do those, then very, very minimum, you should do the first 5 pauris of Japji and the first 5 pauris of Jaap Sahib. So they go together. We have to remember that the evolution of the Gurus took 200 years. And a 3HO, it's 50 years now. And we all know to do Japji Sahib, and the evolution is Jaap Sahib. These are hand in hand. We have two cornerstones, Japji Sahib and Jaap Sahib. That's the summary of what I wanted to say. I wanted to encapsulate it by saying that you can see, I just wanted to reiterate what I was saying before, that you can see this as teachings that we should follow them. You could see them as a kind of a medicine book. That's what a lot of what we do in Kundalini Yoga is we say, well, this bani will help with, Jaap Sahib is the element of air. So if you have a headache, you can do Jaap Sahib and it will alleviate the air element in a kind of Ayurvedic kind of thinking. Well, that's great. You can look at these as medicines. If you're feeling depressed, then you should do the other bani called Talprasad Swaya. If you don't feel like your prayers have sufficient power, you need more protection, then do Chopai Sahib. These are all the banis of Guru Gobind Singh. If you want to invoke love, then do Shabad Hazare. These are all banis. So you can look at them as a kind of formula book, or you, like I said, you can look at them as an obligation, as a religious obligation. I would encourage us all to look at this as we are lucky in this one short lifetime that we have, that we've even heard of these things called Japji Sahib and Jaap Sahib. We are blessed. We are so lucky to even know that such things exist. So going through and learning alphabets and reciting these things, it seems like, this is pretty mundane stuff, but the significance of what we're participating in is species evolutionary level. It's the elevation of the planet level stuff. The more you do these things, you live by these teachings and you recite these words, think about the significance that Guru Gobind Singh, the most highly evolved being, the most highly evolved human to walk the earth, he gave this Jaap Sahib. He gave all the teachings from the Dasam Granth. And for some reason, he took it upon himself to recite it again every single day. It's like we can't even contemplate the significance of this. Why would he have to recite it every single day? It blows the mind. It's like they are so significant that even a perfected being, he's instilling it in himself and he's instilling it in the community. That's how profound and powerful and important these things are. These multi-dimensional teachings that you read the translation of the Gurbani 1 year of your life, 5 years later you read the same translation and you get a totally different meaning. There's a minimum of 7 different layers that every Bani has, and every translation and meaning you can give to it, there's always another layer that you'll later discover. These are multi-level, these are multi-lifetime, these are extremely significant. So my encouragement is to look at this as we are supremely blessed to even know about these things, much less be able to recite them every day. And again, we have 2 cornerstones. One is Japji Sahib, and the other cornerstone is Jaap Sahib. So that's I'm done.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little short version maybe of when and where Guru Gobind Singh wrote Jaap Sahib?
Yeah, he was 16 years old. Again, there's always a thing with Guru Gobind Singh that for some reason they always make him 5 years younger than he actually was. What we're now finding is that basically every age we think he was actually 5 years older than that. So he wasn't 11, but he was 16 years old. He was next to a river. There's a Gurdwara that celebrates the place where he wrote Jaap Sahib. And the reason I was trying to because what is the history of why he wrote it? What was the circumstances going on in his life? Well, Jaap Sahib is like I said, it's the cornerstone of all of his teachings, the whole Dasam Granth. It's the Japji of Guru Gobind Singh. So what is the event that led to creating Jaap Sahib was his incarnation. His incarnation was the event that led to him creating Jaap Sahib. And he created many other teachings. His banis are said that there's certain banis which are kind of restricted. They're so powerful, they will create so much fighting spirit in a person that it's actually warned against the general public from reciting them. Some of them, they say that you should only do it if you've done 2 to 5 Japji Sahibs first, then you can do this other bani. But Jaap Sahib is approved for the general audience. It's sanctified for everyone. That I hope that answers the question. I had one little anecdote I was kind of forgetting to include here, but it will come up in a moment if we carry on the conversation.
Very, very good. Hey, Joe, that was awesome, man. Thank you for sharing all that.
Somebody's asking, which is the bani for protection? That's Chopai Sahib. That's one of the 5 banis that are given Chopai Sahib.
Awesome. So when we do Jaap Sahib, we're meditating, right? We're not just reciting, and we're doing Nad Yoga, we're reciting, but we're also meditating. And the purpose is to become one with the mind, body, soul. And so the question is, how do we meditate? And I saw a quote from Jaap Sahib, and he was asking the question, how do we meditate? And I thought, not exactly sure how to answer that question. I think probably quiet your thoughts down, sit still, feel relaxed, etc. So kind of gave the basic answer. And he had told me one time that that there's one person in 3HO who can meditate, and he can only do it sometimes, but he has the ability to merge his finite consciousness into the infinite consciousness. And I asked this person the question of, how do you meditate, to see if he could describe to me how to meditate. And he did something like what I would have done. And so I said, well, let me tell you what I learned. And when I explained it to him, he said, I couldn't have explained it that way, but that's exactly what I do. So here is what Yogi Bhajan said about how to meditate. There's 3 parts. You might want to write this down. It's a game changer for you. Number 1, the body is just the body. Number 2, the soul is just the soul. Number 3, the mind isn't just the mind, because the mind can take you to the infinite mind. So the act of meditation has nothing to do with the body or with the soul. It only has to deal with the mind. And so how do you deal with the mind? You sit with the mind. That's what meditating is. You sit with the mind. You will find that by sitting with the mind, you will find it very cozy and very comfortable. This is golden chain information. You want to believe it, you want to practice it, you want to do it, because if you do, it'll work for you, and it will create a miracle for you. He said, at first, it'll be hard to stay within the mind for a very long period of time. That's why we meditate. That is meditation. You sit, and you sit with your mind for longer periods of time. He says, when you spend enough time in your mind in that cozy, comfortable place, at some point in time, that will lead you to the infinite mind. There's only one other thing to do, which is while you're sitting with the mind, the subconscious mind, the thoughts keep coming in. You just want to keep those at bay and stay within the mind. One of the most beautiful things about mantra is that it makes it easier to meditate. So if you're just closing your eyes and meditating, and you're breathing, let's say, you're not hearing anything in your mind except a little breath. And maybe you can sit in your mind, maybe you can't. But I guarantee you, when you chant mantra, it's a mind focus, right? Mind projection. And when you chant mantra, it makes it easier to sit within your mind. And Jaap Sahib is one very long mantra, right? It's Gurbani. It's a perfect science of Nad Yoga, which mantra is too. But Gurbani is the highest of the high. It's the perfect balance of earth and ether. And there's nothing better than that. Yogi Bhajan would, that was the love of his life, was Gurbani. So when we do our banis, he also told me singing, one time out of the blue, we were sitting at the ranch, and he said, singing is better than talking. And so I thought, okay, well, what that means is I should be singing my banis and not talking my banis. But no matter how I do it, whether I read Nitname, or I close my eyes and recite banis, or I sing my banis, it's still the same process of, are you sitting with your mind in that cozy, warm place? It's the same exact process, no matter how you do it. So, Chakra Chen Ara Barana Jat Ara Patna Hanajah Roop Rang Arde Kebek Kuhu Ke Na Sakat Ke Achal Murat Andpo Prakas Amatoj Kehijab Kot Indra Indran Saho Sahan Gunejab Trapavan Mahip Surnara Asur Nate Nate Ban Tran Kahato Tava Saramanam Katha Kaban Karamanam Baranato Sumato. And just do like chant the Long Onkars, and just let's do it together, and just focus and just sit with your mind, forget the body, forget the soul, listen to the mantra. He also, another way of looking at it is, sitting with the mind is, half the job is chanting the Bani, the other half the job is to listen to the Bani. And that's the same thing as saying, sit with your mind. That's where all the magic happens. That's where the mind can take you to the infinite mind. So we go, inhale, ik, om. Sat Nam City. Wah. Hey Guru. And if you sit with your mind, you will immediately know that you're in the right place. You're not thinking, you're letting the thoughts stay out, and you're just sitting with the mind, and you want to trust that this is exactly how to meditate. Once I discovered that, I learned how to meditate and get into, quote, the meditative state immediately. Can't always stay with it, but I know when I'm in it, because he explained it. You're sitting with your mind in a very comfortable, cozy place. Do it for a longer period of time. That will take you to the infinite mind. So the body is just the body. Soul is just the soul. Don't worry about either one of those. What he said about the body, the only thing that the body does do is you want to sit still so it stays out of the way. It doesn't become a bothersome thing. You don't want to be thinking about your foot or your toe or your leg or belly button or whatever. That's the body. Don't think about that. And also don't worry about the soul. Oh, my soul, it's going to be blah, 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 blah. Nope, has nothing to do with it. It's all about the mind and feeling that comfortable, cozy place in your mind. So when you do Jaap Sahib and all the banis, if you got a guitar, if you're a musician, just sing them. Ek Onkar Satanam Karta Purkh Nirbho Nirvair Akal Murat Ajuni Sabhang Gur Prasad Jap Ad Sach Jugad Sach Happy Sach Nanak Hosi Be Sach Socha Sochana Hovi Jay Sochi Lakwar Chupa Chupana Hovi Jay Laira Halivtar Bukya Bukana Utri Je Bana Purya Bhar Sahasyana Palak Hoet Ikana Chalenal Give us a Chiara Hoya Give a Korda Tortapal Hukamana Jai Charana Narak Likyanal Hukmi hovan akar, hukm na kaya jai. Hukmi hovan ji, hukm la badiai. Hukmi tum nature, hukm le duk sukh paya. Ikna hukmi baksis, ik hukmi sada bhavaya. Hukma andar sabko, bahar hukm na koi, narak hukma je bujha. To homa kahana koi. Gabe ko tan hova ki setan. Gabe ko dat jana nisan. Gabe ko gun badiya achar. Gabe ko vidya bikam bichar. Gabe ko sad kare tanke. Gabe ko jila ferde. Gabe ko japad sadur. Gabe ko vekha hadra hadur. Katana katina avatot. Kat kat kati koti kot kot. Denda dala de tukapahe. Juga jugantar kahi kahi. Hukmi hukum chala hiraho. Nanak vigsave parvaho. So it's the same process. I was comfortable in my mind. I was thinking about the mantra, the Gurbani, and in that cozy, warm place that we like to be. And you do that for 2 hours a day. I heard him say one time, you think I want to do sadhana for 2.5 hours? He said, I'd rather have it be 10 minutes. He said, unfortunately, that's not how it works. 2.5 hours is the requirement for this brain of ours to absorb the experience. You know, when Sri Singh Sahib washed the floors for 4 years at the Golden Temple, and he had that liberating experience, the story kind of goes that he was liberated by washing the floors of the Golden Temple. But I heard a different story. What I heard him say is, while he was washing the floors of the Golden Temple, day by day, the Gurbani absorbed into his brain until one day he had the big magical, like the light of 1,000,000,000 suns come into his being. And he was so thankful for it. He had to thank Guru Ram Das for this experience. And he asked himself, how do I show my gratitude? And he said, I'll write some poetry. And he said, no, not writing my poetry. Only one way to do it. And that's Gurbani. Has to be that level of height to describe his gratitude to Guru Ram Das. So he searched out 5 Banis and he created the 5 Shabads of Guru Ram Das. The 5 Shabads of Guru Ram Das are not something you learn in Sikh history because they don't exist. He created it. He was in gratitude to Guru Ram Das and created those, and he gave those to us as a gift. And it's a golden chain. That's how he did it. That's how I do it. Follow the teacher. That's the way to go. Wanted to just say a couple things. A really fantastic version of Jaap Sahib is by a guy named Bhai Jarnail Singh. And Buddy Dave Joe, could you please pull up that link to Bhai Jarnail Singh? I want everybody to see what he looks like. It's kind of a young picture of him, but I want you to pick the right guy. A lot of times a Sant Jarnail Singh will show up, and that's not what I'm talking about. This is Bhai Jarnail Singh. That's the guy. He's now much older than that, by the way. He's a gray-bearded, 70-year-old man. But this guy's rendition of Jaap Sahib is so good. And I think, Harijot, I think you and your brother probably told me this, that there's a group of guys and they do what's called Taksal style of chanting Gurbani. And this is one of them. They do every single haha and bihari and sihadi and oo sounds and o sounds. And they just say everything absolutely perfect to the nod of the yoga. And my son actually discovered this guy and he said, Papaji, wait till you hear this guy. It's amazing. Not only does he do it fast, but it's the most powerful version I've ever heard. The pronunciation is just off the charts. It's fantastic. Really highly recommend you put him on. When we first started, he was not that well known, only had, 1,000 or so what is it, repetitions of his YouTube thing, and now he's just killing it. It's, hundreds of thousands, whatever. Really, really good. And I've learned so much from him, how he chants it and recites it. And he's got some agahaha, abahaha, that kind of stuff that we don't normally do. He does some gannas instead of muktas on some parts of Jaap Sahib. And it's just super powerful. So really highly recommend Jaap Singh. Check him out. He's great. I kind of want to end this. Yeah.
I was just going to throw in a couple of things to say that Jaap Sahib is more difficult to pronounce than Japji Sahib. And most people, if it's your second language, if Punjabi is not native to you, it'll be very difficult. And to be quite honest, you probably will never be able to pronounce it 100% perfect. I can proudly say my uncle is one of the elders who's done much better than most. Still, a small percent can be done better. Everybody can do probably better. I can do better. Pronunciation there's a whole scale of like how to be perfect in the pronunciation. And he's of the top. And but it's kind of like when I was learning Gurmukhi and in India, my teacher of Gurmukhi, his name was Parvinder, and he was this beautiful Sevadar at the Golden Temple, and he would volunteer to come and teach us all in his free time in our free time. But anyways, I was starting to kind of get a little bit more conversant in how to read the language in general, and I could read Japji, and I did the 84 steps. So I was like, oh well, I guess I can read Gurmukhi good enough, And I would drive around town and I could read certain signs, And so I said, then we traveled to this village of Nihangs, the warrior Sikhs, and it was such like a Guru Gobind Singh feeling. I just had like the inspiration. You know what? I'm gonna take my nitnem. I'm gonna go on the roof, and I'm gonna do Jaap Sahib, like just from the Gurmukhi. And it normally takes about 20 minutes, and I think it took me like an hour and a half or something. It was so frustrating. It was one of the most frustrating things I've ever done. But I was determined, like I'm gonna make through it. I think I teared up. I think I even started crying at some point. It was so difficult to get through.
Right.
And it is more difficult than Japji. So
Yeah.
it's a thing that you will have to keep learning. And even if you think you know it, then you still keep learning. And that's kind of why I mentioned about how in Gurmukhi they say it's a Mehengi Bani, which means it's more expensive. Even if you know the language, you cannot just simply read these banis of Guru Gobind Singh. It's still difficult. Even if you know the language, you need training. If you don't know the language, you need much more training. So maybe frustrating, may seem mundane, but the point is that these are extremely sacred things, and it's a whole project. It's a lifestyle. This is a new thing to include in our diet. That's the whole point of all this.
Absolutely true. No question. Thanks, Harijot. I think we're coming up against our 9 o'clock start time. I want to end it with this, that I think in 2001, maybe 2002, before Sri Singh Sahib passed away, he was sitting at the bench at the Espanola Gurdwara, and I was lucky enough to be there with him. We were sitting next to each other. And he asked me to put Jaap Sahib to music. And he said, in the Aquarian age, Jaap Sahib can't be done the same martial way that it has been done. It's supposed to be done mellow and beautiful. He said, with just a little bit of martial energy. And to make sure that I understood his instructions right, I said, so kind of like martial mellow. And I realized it sounds like I just said marshmallow. I started laughing. At any rate, he said, yes, mellow, martial, with just a little bit of martial energy. So we put it to music with what we hope is a mellow martial style. It's exactly 31 minutes long, perfect for bowing Jaap Sahib. We copied the tempo of what the original Satnam Singh's version was. It worked out perfect. I just didn't repeat some of the things, so it turned out just right on 31 minutes long, and it's really great. But Sri Singh Sahib then said, the world is in a very, very dark place. And Jaap Sahib has the ability to penetrate right through the chest, take the heart out, heal the heart, and put it back in. He said, Jaap Sahib is the tool for the Aquarian age. And I thought about that I thought, whoa, that's radical. So we've got 2,000 years of this age of Aquarius. And for the next 2,000 years, the tool for this age for all of us is Jaap Sahib. So we're just the beginning of it. We're jumping it off right now. We're getting it going. We need to make this a focus of our lives moving forward as Jaap Sahib. It's the energy of the new age. And that's what he told me. And I'm now sharing with you 20 years later when he told me. And I think we're ready to start. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Please learn Gurmukhi. That's the key. If you don't learn it, you'll never quite have it right. So learn it, get it over with, because once you do, the joy of Gurmukhi is just so awesome. And it's just the perfect mantra. It's so relaxing. It's so great. You can memorize them, you can sing them, you can play them, you can chant them, you can read them. And it becomes a part of your life's blood. So encourage you to go for it. Enjoy the process. Reach out to these teachers. Sadhasat Simran. What's her name? I'm sorry. Rupinder.
Rupinder, yeah.
In any teacher out there, get them and learn it. So Onkar, I think that wraps us up. Do I do long time son? Do we, and then we start the process or what?
Can we inject, there was one question somebody asked, what are the 5 Banis of Guru Ramdas that you mentioned?
Well, let's see here. Dan Dan Ramdas Gur, Ik Ardas Pat Kirat Ki, Raj Jog Takatadian, Kundalini Suraji Sat Sangat, and what's the 5th one, nephew? Covered all of them except one. Anyone? What's the 5th one?
It's some Savaiye, and it's not as well known, but we just did it once a year.
It's Nam Ki Badai Day.
There we go.
So Nam Ki Badai Day is the 5th one. So there are 5, and I've also noticed a pattern in him when he would give lectures. It seems as though Raj Jog Takatadian is kind of the king of the 5 Banis. He really focused on that quite a bit. So those are the 5. If you look them up, they're there, Google them. And so, yeah. May the long time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way on. May the long time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way on. Guide your way on. Guide your way on. Guide your way on. Guide your way on, Satnam, Satnam. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa,
Khalsa,
Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Again, Onkar, thank you for hosting this and organizing it. Thanks so much.
Waheguru, thank you both, Guru Shabad Singh and Harijot Singh. It was beautiful. Thank you for sharing your knowledge today. And so now we're going to kick off our 12 hours of Jaap Sahib recitation. And the first round we're going to share the musical version that Guru Shabad Singh just described that he created recently. Waheguru. So we'll start now. Satnam.
ਸਤਨਾਮ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਇੱਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਜਾਪ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਮੁਖਵਾਕ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹੀ ਦਸਵੀਂ ਸ਼ਪੈ ਚੰਦ ਤਵ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ चक्र चह नर पर न जातर पात न है न जय रूप रंग एक बेको कहे न सकत कै अचल मूर्त अनपो प्रकाशम तोज कहे जय कोट इंद्र इंद्रान साहो साहान गुणे जय पवन मही सुर नर असुरेत नेत पंत्रण कहत त्व सर्व नाम कथा कवन करम नाम बरनत सुमत भुजं प्रियात छंद नमस्तुं काले नमस्तुं कृपाले नमस्तं रूपे नमस्तं अनूपे नमस्तं बेके नमस्तं लेके नमस्तं काये नमस्तं जाये नमस्तं गंजे नमस्तं भंजे नमस्तं नामे नमस्तं ठाणे नमस्तं कर्मं नमस्तं धर्मं नमस्तं नामं नमस्तं धामं नमस्तं जीते नमस्तं बीते नमस्तं बाहे नमस्तं डाहे नमस्तं नीले नमस्तं नादे नमस्तं शेदे नमस्तं कादे नमस्तं गंजे नमस्तं भंजे नमस्तं उदारे नमस्तं पारे नमस्तं सुएका नमस्तं अनेका नमस्तं पूते नमस्तं जूते नमस्तं कर्मे नमस्तं भरमे नमस्तं देशे नमस्तं भेसे नमस्तं नामे नमस्तं कामे नमस्तं ताते नमस्तं खाते नमस्तं दूते नमस्तं भूते नमस्तं लोके नमस्तं शोके नमस्तं थापे नमस्तं थापे नमस्तं माने नमस्तं दाने नमस्तं गाये नमस्तं बाहे नमस्तं त्रिवर्गे नमस्तं सर्गे नमस्तं प्रभोगे नमस्तं सुजोगे नमस्तं रंगे नमस्तं भंगे नमस्तं गम्मे नमस्तस् रम्मे नमस्तं जलासे नमस्तं निरासे नमस्तं जाते नमस्तं पाते नमस्तं मजबे नमस्तस् अजबे हरदेशं देशे नमस्तं भेषे नमस्तं धामे नमस्तं बामे नमो सर्वकाले नमो सर्वदयाले नमो सर्वरूपे नमो सर्वभूते नमो सर्वखापे नमो सर्वथापे नमो सर्वकाले नमो सर्वकाले नमस्तस्य देव नमस्तं देव नमस्तं जनमे नमस्तं सुभरमे नमो सर्वगुणे नमो सर्वभुवने नमो सर्वरंगे नमो सर्वभंगे नमो काल काले नमस्तस्ते आले नमस्तं वरने नमस्तं मरने नमस्तं जरारं नमस्तं कृतारं नमो सर्वदन्दे नमो सद अपन्दे नमस्तं रसाके नमस्तं बाके नमस्तं रहीमे नमस्तं करीमे नमस्तं अनन्ते नमस्तं महन्ते नमस्तस्तरागे नमस्तं सोहागे नमो सर्वसुखं नमो सर्वभोगं नमो सर्वकर्ता नमो सर्वहर्ता नमो जोग जोगे नमो भोग भोगे नमो सर्वदयाले नमो सर्वपाले छात्री छंद त्वप्रसाद अरूपा रूपा जुहा बुहा लेखा बेखा नामा कामा अदेहा बेहा जीता पीता त्रमाना निताना त्रिवर्गा सर्गा अनिला नादा जेहा जादा जन्मा बरना पुता बरना अकंजा पंजा जुजा जंजा विकार विका तंदा पंदा samasti vibhute kalankam ganane kalanki sarupe namo raja raje swarang parama rupe namo yoga yoge swarang parama siddhe namo raja raje swarang parama vritte namo sastra pane namo astra mane namo parama gyata namo lokamatha apekiya paramiya bogiya bhagate namo yoga yoge swarang parama jugate namo nirnarayane krur karme namo pret apret deve sudharme namo roga harta namo raga rupe namo saha saham namo pupa pupe namo dana dane namo mana mane namo roga roge namastam sananam namo mantra mantram namo jantra jantram namo ishte ishte namo tantra tantram sada satchidananda sarvam pranasi arupe arupe samaso nevasi sada siddhata buddhata prithakrata ado urda ardam agangoga harta param parama parameswaram procha param sada sarvada siddhata deyalam asheti abedi anamam akamam samasto paraji samastastatamam tera jor chachri shand चले है थले है पीता बे है प्रभु है अजू है अदेश है अबेस है भुजंग प्रियात शंद अगादे अबादे अनंदी स्वरूपे नमो सर्वमाने समस्ति निधाने नमस्त्वं गणनाथे नमस्त्वं प्रमाते नमस्त्वं गंजे नमस्त्वं पंजे नमस्त्वं काले नमस्त्वं पाले नमो सर्वदेशे नमो सर्वभेषे नमो राज राजे नमो साज साजे नमो साह साहे नमो माह माहे नमो गीत गीते नमो प्रीत प्रीते नमो रोख रोके नमो सोख सोखे नमो सर्व रोगे नमो सर्व भोगे नमो सर्व जीतं नमो सर्व पीतं नमो सर्व ज्ञानं नमो परमदानं नमो सर्व मन्त्रं नमो सर्व जन्त्रं नमो सर्व दृशं नमो सर्व कृशं नमो सर्व रंगे त्रिभंगी अनंगे नमो जीव जीवं नमो बीज बीजे अखिजे अबिजे समस्तं प्रसिजे कृपालं स्वरूपे कुकर्मं प्रणनासि सदा सर्वदा रिद्ध सिद्धं नवासि चरपट छंद त्वप्रसाद अमृत कर्मे अमृत धर्मे अकल जोगे अचल भोगे अचल राजे अटल साजे अकल धर्मं अलख कर्मं सर्वं दाता सर्वं ज्ञाता सर्वं भाने सर्वं माने सर्वं प्राणं सर्वं त्राणं सर्वं भुक्ता सर्वं जुगता सर्वं देवं सर्वं देवं सर्वं काले सर्वं पाले रुवाल शंद त्वप्रसाद आदरूप अनाद मूर्त अजौन पुरख अपार सर्वमात्र मान देव देव आद उदार सर्व पालक सर्व कारक सर्व कोपनकार तत्र तत्र विराज अवधूत रूप रसार अछूत प्रचंड गत अखंड आलसाकरम आद्रसातरम सर्वाभर नाट्य अनदंड पाट्य चाचरी छंद त्वप्रसाद गोविंदे मुखंदे उदारे अपारे हरियं करियं निर्नामे अकामे भुजं प्रियात छंद चतर चक्र करता चतर चक्र हरता चतर चक्र दाने चतर चक्र जाने चतर चक्र वर्ती चतर चक्र वर्ती चतर चक्र पाले चतर चक्र खाले चतर चक्र पासे चतर चक्र वासे चतर चक्र माया चतर चक्र धान्य चाचरी छंद ना सत्रा ना मित्रा ना परमं ना मित्रा ना कर्मं ना काये अजन्मं न जाये ना चित्रा ना मित्रा परे है पवित्रा प्रतिसा अदिसा अदृसा अकृसा भगवती छंद वप्रसाद खतते के आशिच देसा के आपिच पेसा के आगंज कर्मा के आपंज परमा के आदिज लोका के आदित सोखा के अवधूत परना के विभूत करना के राजन प्रवाह के धर्मं तुजा के आशोक परना के सर्वा अपरना के जगतं कृति है के शत्रं क्षत्रि है के ब्रह्मं स्वरूप के अनुभव अनूप के आद देवा के आप देवा के चित्रं बहीना के एका अधीना के रोजी रजा कर ही मैं रहा के पाग बे अब के गबल गब के अफो गोना है के साहन साह के कारण को नद है के रोजी दे है के राज ग्रही है के कर्मं करी है के सर्वं करी है के सर्वंगली है के सर्वत्र मान्या के सर्वत्र दान्या के सर्वत्र गौना के सर्वत्र पाना के सर्वत्र देशा के सर्वत्र देशा के सर्वत्र राजा के सर्वत्र साजा के सर्वत्र दीना के सर्वत्र दीना के सर्वत्र जाहो के सर्वत्र पाहो के सर्वत्र देशा के सर्वत्र पेशा के सर्वत्र काला के सर्वत्र पाला के सर्वत्र हंता के सर्वत्र गंता के सर्वत्र पेकी के सर्वत्र पेकी के सर्वत्र काजा के सर्वत्र राजा के सर्वत्र सोखा के सर्वत्र पोखा के सर्वत्र त्राणा के सर्वत्र प्राणा के सर्वत्र देशा के सर्वत्र भेषा के सर्वत्र मान्य सदैवं प्रधान्य के सर्वत्र जाप्या के सर्वत्र थाप्या के सर्वत्र माना के सर्वत्र माना के सर्वत्र इंद्रा के सर्वत्र चंद्रा के सर्वं कलीमा के परमं फहीमा के आग अलामा के साहेब कलामा के हुस्न वजूहा तमाम रजूहा हमें सो सलामा सलीखत मदामा गनीम और सकसदा गरीब और परसदा बुलंद और मखाना जमीन और ज़माना तमीज़ और तमाम रजू ने दाने हरीफ और लजीना रजायक यकीना अनेकों तरंगा बेदा बंगा अजीज़ों निवाजा गनीम और राजा निरुकत स्वरूपात मुकत नाश है प्रतिरो प्रवास है निरुक्त प्रभा है सदैवं सदा है विभुक्त स्वरूप है प्रजुक्त अनूप है निरुक्त सदा है विभुक्त प्रभा है अनुक्त स्वरूप है प्रजुक्त अनूप है चाचरी शंद अपंगा नंगा बेका रेखा परमा कर्मा नादा जुगादा अजहा बहा भूता दूता नासा दासा तंदा बंदा अपकता बिरकता नासा प्रकाशा न चिंता सुनिता लिखा दिखा अलिखा बेखा डाहा कहा असंबा गंबा लीला नादा अनिता सुनिता जाता जाता चरपत छंद त्वा प्रसाद सर्वं हंता सर्वं गंता सर्वं ख्याता सर्वं ज्ञाता सर्वं हरता सर्वं कर्ता सर्वं प्राणं सर्वं प्राणं सर्वं कर्मं सर्वं धर्मं सर्वं जगता सर्वं मुक्ता प्रसावल छंद त्वा प्रसाद नमो नरकनासे सदैवं प्रकाशे अनंगं स्वरूपे अपंगं विभूते प्रमातं प्रमाते सदा सर्वसाते अगाध स्वरूपे निर्बाध विभूते अनंगी अनामे त्रपंगी त्रिकामे त्रपंगी स्वरूपे सर्वंगी अनूपे ना पुत्रा ना सत्रा ना मित्रा ना ताता ना माता ना जाता ना पाता साकं सरिका मितो अमिका सदावं प्रभाहा जाहा जाहा भगवती शंद त्वा प्रसाद के जार हुआ के हाजिर हाजिर है हमें सो सलाम है समस्त कलाम है के साहिब दिमाग है के हुस्न चराग है के काम और करीम है के राज करीम है के रोज़े दिल है के राज करीम है करीम और कमाल है के हुस्न जमाल है गनीम और खराज है गरीब और निवाज है हरीफ और सिकन है हिरास और फिकन है कलंकं प्रणास है समस्त निवास है अगंज गनीम है जाए गृहीम है समस्त जुबा है के साहिब के राह है के नरकं प्रणास है बेहेश्वर निवास है के सर्वोवन है हमें सुरवन है तमाम तमीज है समस्त चीज है परम परमा ईसा समस्त अधीसा देशो अलेखा हमेशो अपेखा जमीनुल जमा है अमीकुल इमा है करीमुल कमाला के जूरत जमाला के अजलम प्रकाश है के मित्तो सुबास है के अजब स्वरूप है के मित्तो विभूत है के मित्तो प्रसा है के आत्म प्रभा है के अजलम नन्ना के मित्तो अपंग है मधु पारशंद त्वा प्रसाद मुन मन प्रणाम गुण गण मुदामर पर अगंझर नर प्रपंच अनगन प्रणाम मुन मन सलाम हर नर अखंड वर नर अमंड अनपव अनास मुन मन प्रकाश गुण गण प्रणाम जल थल मुदाम अनशिज अंग आसन अपंग उपमा ठट्ट अपार अटिट तरम अटटिट करम अनब्रह्म अनंत दाता महंत हर बोलो मना शंद त्वा प्रसाद करनाल है अर काल है कल खंडन है महमंडन है जगतेश्वर है परमेश्वर है कल कारण है सर्वबारण है त्रित के तृण है जग के कर्ण है मन मान्य है जग जान्य है सर्वंबर है सर्वंकर है सर्वभाष्य है सर्वनाश्य है करुणाकर है विश्वंबर है सर्वेश्वर है जगतेश्वर है ब्रह्मांडस है कलकंडस है परते पर है करुणाकर है अजप है अथपातप है अकृताकृत है अमृतामृत है अमृतामृत है करुणाकृत है अकृताकृत है तरुणीकृत है अमृतेश्वर है परमेश्वर है अकृताकृत है अमृतामृत है अजपाकृत है अमृतामृत है नरनायक है कलकायक है विश्वंबर है करनाय है नृपनायक है सर्वपायक है भवभंजन है हरगंजन है रिपतापन है जप जापन है अकलंकृत है सर्वाकृत है करता कर है हरता हर है परमात्मा है सर्वात्मा है आत्म बस है जस के जस है भुजं त्रियात छंद नमो सूरज सूरजे नमो चंद्र चंद्रे नमो राज राजे नमो इंद्र इंद्रे नमो अंधकारे नमो तेज तेजे नमो बृंद बृंदे नमो बीज बीजे नमो राजसं तामसं शांत रूपे नमो परम तत्तं तत्तं स्वरूपे नमो योग जोगे नमो ज्ञान ज्ञाने नमो मंत्र मंत्रे नमो ध्यान ध्याने नमो जुद जुदे नमो ज्ञान ज्ञाने नमो पोज पोजे नमो पान पाने नमो कल करता नमो सात रूपे नमो इंद्र इंद्रयानानंद भूते अलंकार रूपे अलंकार लंके नमो आस आसे नमो पंक पंके अपंगी स्वरूपे अनंगी नामे त्रिभंगी त्रिकाले अनंगी अखाने एक अशरी छंद अजाला बाबा पूजु अनासकाश अगंज बंज लक बक काले आलेख बेक अनाम काम कहा अटा अनाते परमाते अजोनी अमोनी नारागे नारंगे नारूपे नारेके कर्मं न परमं न गंजे अलेके उच्चं क्रियात छंद नमस्व प्रणामे समस्व प्रणासे अगंजुला नामे समस्व निवासे कामंद भूते समस्व स्वरूपे को कर्मं प्रणासे सुधर्मं विभूते सदा सच्चिदानंद सत्रं प्रणासे करी मूर्ख निंदा समस्व निवासी अजाय विभूते जाय करी में हरियं करियं करी मुरही में चतर चक्रवर्ती चतर चक्र भुगते स्वयं बप्सु बन सर्वदा सर्व जुगते तो कालं प्रणासी दयालं स्वरूपे सदा अंग संगे अपंगं विभूते चतर चक्रवर्ती छतर चक्र भुगते सुयंभव सुभं सर्वदा सर्वदुगते दुःखालं प्रणासी दयालं स्वरूपे सदानंद संदेह भंगं विभूते वाहिगुरु
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Jaap Sahib. Sri Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh Paatshai Dasmi. Chakra Charan Chape Chantwa Prasad. Chakra Charan Ar Paran Chat Ar Paat Nahin Chah. रूप रंग और रेख पेख को कह न सकत कह अचल मूरत तन पौ प्रकाश मितोज की चह कोट इंद्र इंद्रान सहा सहान गनी चह त्रे पवन महीप सुर नर अर सुर नेत नेत बन त्रिन कहत त्वव सर्प नाम कथे कवन कर्म नाम वर्णत समत पुछंग प्रयाद छंद नमस्वन काले नमस्तन कृपाले नमस्तन रूपे नमस्तन नुपे नमस्तन पेखे नमस्तन लेखे नमस्तन काहे नमस्तन जाए नमस्तन गंजे नमस्तन पंजे नमस्तन नामे नमस्तन तामे नमस्तन कर्मन नमस्तन धर्मन नमस्तन नामे नमस्तन तामे नमस्तन जीते नमस्तन बीते नमस्तन बाहे नमस्तन डाहे नमस्तन नीले नमस्तन नाते नमस्तन चेते नमस्तन गाते नमस्तन गंजे नमस्तन पंजे नमस्तन उदारे नमस्तन पारे नमस्तन सुएके नमस्तन नेके नमस्तन भूते नमस्तन चुपे नमस्तन कर्मे नमस्तन बर्मे नमस्तन देसे नमस्तन बेसे नमस्तन नामे नमस्तन कामे नमस्तन दाते नमस्तन गाते नमस्तन दूते नमस्तन भूते नमस्तन लोके नमस्तन सुखे नमस्तन थापे नमस्तन थापे नमस्तन त्रेमाने नमस्तन दाने नमस्तन गाहे नमस्तन बाहे नमस्तन त्रिवर्गे नमस्तन सर्गे नमस्तन प्रभोगे नमस्तन सजोगे नमस्तन रंगे नमस्तन पंगे नमस्तन तन्मे नमस्तस्तरन्मे नमस्तन जलाश्रय नमस्तन निराश्रय नमस्तन जाते नमस्तन पाते नमस्तन मजबे नमस्तस्त्व अजबे अदेसन तेसे नमस्तन बेसे नमस्तन थामे नमस्तन वामे नमो सर्व काले नमो सर्व दयाले नमो सर्व रूपे नमो सर्व भूपे नमो सर्व खापे नमो सर्व थापे नमो सर्व काले नमो सर्व पाले नमस्तस्त्व देवे नमस्तन्न पेवे नमस्तन्न जन्मे नमस्तन सोवर्मे नमो सर्व गौने नमो सर्व पौने Namo Sarvarange, Namo Sarvapange, Namo Kale Kale, Namastastvaityale, Namastan Nabarne, Namastan Namarne, Namastan Jararan, Namastan Prataran, Namo Sarvatande, Namo Sattabande, Namastan Rasake, Namastan Rebake, Namastan Rahime, Namastan Karime, Namastan Nanante, Namastan Mahante, Namastastvara,ge Namastan Sohare Hage, Namo Sarva Sukhan, Namo Sarva Pukhan, Namo Sarva Karta, Namo Sarva Harta, Namo Joga Joge, Namo Phoga Phoge, Namo Sarva Dhyale, Namo Sarva Pale, Chachri Chand Tvat Prasad, Arupaha, Anupaha, Ajuha, Apuha, Alekaha, Apekaha, Anamaha, Akamaha, Adeha, Apeha, Ajitaha, Abitaha, Trimanaha, Nidanaha, Triparagaha, Asaragaha, Anilaha, Anadaha, Ajeha, Ajadaha, Ajanamaha, Aparanaha, Abhutaha, Aparanaha, Akanjaha, Apanjaha, Ajujaha, Ajanjaha, Amikaha, Rafikaha, Atandaha, Abandaha, Nirpujaha, Asujaha, Akalaha, Ajalaha, Alaha, Ajaha, Anantaha, Mahantaha, Alikaha, Mersikaha, Nirlambaha, Asambaha, Aganamha, Ajanamaha, Aputaha, Ashutaha, Alokaha, Asokaha, Akaramaha, Aparamaha, Ajitaha, Abitaha, Abaha, Agaha, Amanaha, Nidanaha, Anekaha, फिर एक पुछं प्रयाचंद नमो सर्वमाने समस्ति निदाने नमो देव देवे अपेकी अपेवे नमो काल काले नमो सर्व पाले नमो सर्व कोने नमो सर्व पौने Anangi anate nrasangi pramate Namo panapane namo manamane Namo chandra chandre namo panapane Namo gita gite namo tana tane Namo nirta nitre namo nada nade Namo Panapane, Namo Bhadapade, Anangi Aname Samasti Sarupe, Prapangi Pramate Samasti Vibhute, Kalankan Benane Kalanki Sarupe, Namo Rajeswara Paramarupe Namo Jog Jageswara Paramasiddhe Namo Rajraje Swarna Paramavritte. Namo Sastrapane, Namo Astramane. Namo Paramagyata, Namo Lokamata. Apeki Aparmi Apuki Apukate. Namo Jog Jogesvarna Paramajukte. Namo Nirane Krura Karme. Namo Preta Preta Deve Sodharme. Namo Rogaharta Namo Ragarupe. Namo Sahasahan Namo Bhupa Bhupe. Namo Dana Dane Namo Mana Mane. Namo Roga Roge Namastan Sanane. Namo Mantra Mantran Namo Jantra Jantran. Namo Ishte Ishte Namo Tantra Tantran. Sada Satchidananda Sarvam Pranasi. Anupe Arupe Samasto Nivasi. Sada Siddhita Buddhita Britkarta. Ado Urta Artan Ang Oga Harta. Param Param Parameshwaran Procha Palan. Sada Sarvada Siddha Tata Dyalan. Acheti Apeti Anamin Nakaman. Samastu Paraji Samastastva Taman. Tera Jor Chachri Chand. Jaleham Taleham Apitaham Apeham Prabhuham Ajuham Atesaham Apesaham Pucham Prachandu Akate Apate Anandi Sarupe. Namo Sarvamane Namaste Nidane. Namastvan Ranathe Namastvan Pramate. Namastvan Naganje Namastvan Napanje. Namastvan Nakale Namastvan Napale. Namo Sarvadese, Namo Sarvapese. Namo Raja Raje, Namo Saja Saje. Namo Shah Shahe, Namo Maha Mahe. Namo Gita Gite, Namo Prita Prite. Namo Roke Roke, Namo Soke Soke. Namo Sarpa Roge, Namo Sarpa Poge. Namo Sarpa Jitan, Namo Sarpa Pitan. Namo Sarpa Gyanan, Namo Paramatanan. Namo Sarva Mantran, Namo Sarva Chantran. Namo Sarva Drishan, Namo Sarva Krishan. Namo Sarva Range Trapangi Anange. Namo Jiva Jivan, Namo Bija Bija. Akhiche Apiche Samastan Prasiche. Kripalan Surupe Kukarman Pranasi. सदा सर्वदारित सिद्धन निवासी जर्पछन्त प्रसाद अमृत कर्मे अभृत धर्मे अक्कल जोगे अचल भोगे अचल राजे अटल साजे अलख धर्मन अलख कर्मन सर्पन दाता सर्पन ज्ञाता सर्पन पाने सर्पन माने सर्पन वाहिगुरु सर्पन प्राणन सर्पन त्राणन सर्पन भुक्ता सर्पन जुक्ता सर्पन देवन सर्पन पेवन सर्पन काले सर्पन पाले चाचरी छंद प्रसाद आदरूप अनाद मूर्त अजून पुरख अपार सर्प पालक त्रिमान देव अपेव आद उदार सर्प पालक सर्प कालक सर्प को पुनकार जतर ततर बैराज ही अवधूत रूप प्रसाद नाम थाम न जात जाकर रूप रंग नरे आद पुरख उदार मूर्त अजून आद सेक देश और न पेश जाकर रूप रेख न राग जतर ततर दिशा विसा हुयो फैल्यो अनुराग नाम काम विहीन पेखत थाम हूँ नह जाए सर्ब मान सर्वत्र मान सदैव मानत ताए एक मूर्त अनेक दर्शन कीन रूप अनेक खेल 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 खेलन अंत को फिर एक देव पेव न जान ही जह भेद और कतेव रूप रंग न जात पात सुजान ही कहजे तात मात न जात जाकर जन्म मरण बहीन चक्कर पक्कर फिरे चक्र चक्र मान ही पुरतीन लोक चौदह के बिखे जग जाप ही जह जाप आद देव अनाद मूर्त थप्यो सबे जथाप परम रूप पुनीत मूर्त पूरन पुरख अपार सरप संभ्य सरप वाहिगुरु सरप संभ्रव सरप संभ्र रच्यो स्यंभव करण पंजनहीन कालहीन कला संयुक्त अकाल पुरख आदेश धर्म ताम सुपरम रेत अपूत अलंक अलख अपेस अंग राग न रंग जाके जात पात न जाम गर्भ पंजन दुष्ट पंजन मुक्त दायक काम आप रूप अमेक अनस्तुत एक पुरख अवधूत गर्भ गंजन सर्प पंजन आद रूप अस्तूत अंगहीन पंगनातम एक पुरख अपार सर्व लायक सर्व गायक सर्व को प्रतिपार सर्व गंता सर्व हंता सर्व ते अनपेक सर्व शास्त्र न जान ही जय रूप रंग अरेक परम पेद पुराण जाके नेत पाखत नित कोट समृत पुराण शास्त्र न आवहि वो चित्त मधुबाग छंद प्रसाद गुण गान उदार महिमा अपार आसान भंग उपमा अनंग अनुभव प्रकाश निस्तिन आनस आजान बाहु शाहान शाह राजान राज बाणान बाण देवान देव उपमा महान इंद्रान इंद्र बालान बाल रंकान रंक कालान काल अनुभूत अंग आबा अभंग गतमित अपार गुणगन उदार मुनगन प्रणाम निर्भय काम अतुट प्रचंड मितगत अखंड आलस्य कर्म आदृश्य धर्म सर्वाभरणाढ्य अंडंड बाढ्य चाचरी चंद प्रसाद गोविंदे मुकुंदे उदारे अपारे हरियं करियं नृणामे अकामे पुछं प्रिया चंद चतुर चक्र कर्ता चतुर चक्र हरता चतुर चक्र दाने चतुर चक्र जाने चतुर चक्र वर्ती चतुर चक्र भरती चतुर चक्र पाले चतुर चक्र काले चतुर चक्र पासे चतुर चक्र वासे चतुर चक्र मान्ये चतुर चक्र धान्ये चाचरी चंद न सत्रे न मित्रे न परमन न पित्रे न कर्मन न काहे अजन्मन न जाहे न चित्रे न मित्रे परे हम पवित्रे प्रदिसे अदृश्य अदिसे अकृष्य भगवती चंद प्रसाद कथते के आजे जैसे के आबेज पैसे के आगंज कर में के आबंज भर में के आबेज लोके के आदित सुखे के अवधूत भरने के बेभूत करने के राजन प्रवाह के धर्मन दुजा है के आशोक भरने के सर्पा भरने के जत्रन वृत्ति है के चत्रन चत्री है के परमन स्वरूप है के अनुभव अनूप है के आद अदेव है के आप अपेव है के चत्रन विहीन के एक के अधीन के रोजी पे जाके रही मैं रहा के पाक बेअब हैं के गैब हैं के अफुल गुनाह हैं के शाहान शाह हैं के कारण कुनिंद है के रोची दहिंद है के राजिक रहीम है के करमन करीम है के सरबन कली है के सरबन दली है के सरपत्र मान्य के सरपत्र दान्य के सरपत्र गौणे के सरपत्र पौणे के सरपत्र देसे के सरपत्र पैसे के सरपत्र राजे के सरपत्र साजे के सरपत्र दीने के सरपत्र लीने के सरपत्र जाहू के सरपत्र बाहू के सरपत्र देसे के सर्वत्र पैसे, के सर्वत्र काले, के सर्वत्र पाले, के सर्वत्र हंता, के सर्वत्र गंता, के सर्वत्र पेखी, के सर्वत्र पेखी, के सर्वत्र काजे, के सर्वत्र राज्य, के सर्वत्र सुखे, के सर्वत्र भूखे, के सर्वत्र त्राणे, के सर्वत्र प्राणे, के सर्वत्र देसे, के सर्वत्र पैसे, के सर्वत्र मान्ये सदेवन प्रदान्ये, के सर्वत्र जापे, के सर्वत्र थापे, के सर्वत्र पाणे, के सर्वत्र माने, के सर्वत्र इंद्रे, के सर्वत्र चंद्रे, के सर्वन कली में, के परमन वही में, के आकाल अल्लाह में, के साहिब कलाम में, के हुस्नुल वजूहा तमाम रजूहा, हमें सब सलाम है सलीकत मुदाम है, गनीम शिकस्ते गरीब परिस्ते, बलिंदो मकाने जमीन जमाने, तमीजो तमामे रजुल निदाने, हरीफ अजीमे रजाइक यकीने, अनेकों तरंग हैं अभेद हैं अभंग हैं, अजीजो निवाज हैं गनीम के राज हैं, निरकत स्वरूप हैं त्रिमुक्त विभूत हैं, त्रिभुक्त प्रभा हैं सुजुगत सुधा हैं, सदेवन स्वरूप हैं अभेदी अनूप हैं, समस्तोपराज हैं सदा सर्व साज हैं, समस्तो सलाम हैं सदैव काम हैं, निर्बाध स्वरूप हैं अगाध हैं अनूप हैं, ओम आद रूपे अनाद स्वरूपे, अनंगी अनामे त्रिपंगी त्रिकामे, त्रिपंगन त्रिबाते अगंजे अगाते, शोभन सर्व पाके सुसर्पा अनुरागे, त्रिभुक्त स्वरूप है अचिच है अचूत है, के निरंकन प्रणास प्रत्युल निवास है, निरक्त प्रभा है सदैवन सदा है, बेभुक्त स्वरूप है प्रजुगत अनूप है, निरक्त सदा है बेभुक्त प्रभा है, अनौकत स्वरूप है प्रजुगत अनूप है, चाचरी चंद अपंग है अनंग है, अपेक है अलेक है, अपरम है अकरम है, अनाद है जुगाद है, अजय है अभय है, अभूत है अदूत है, अनास है उदास है, अतंद है अपंद है, अभक्त है अभिरक्त है, अनास है प्रकाश है, निचिंत है सुनिंत है, अलिख है अतिख है, अलेख है अपेक है, अडा है अगा है, असंभ है अगंभ है, अनील है अनाद है, अनित है सुनित है, अजात है Ajadam Charpacham Prasad Sarpanahanta Sarpanaganta Sarpangyata Sarpangyata Sarpanharta Sarpankarta Sarvan Pranan Sarvan Tranan Sarvan Karman Sarvan Dharman Sarvan Jukta Sarvan Mukta Rasaval Chandra Prasad Namo Narkanase Sadevam Prakase Anangan Surupe Abhangam Vibhute Pramatham Pramate Sada Sarvasate Agada Surupe Nirbhada Vibhute Anangi Aname Tripangi Trekame Nirbangi Sarupe Sarbangi Anupe Naputre Naputre Nasatre Namitre Natate Namate Najate Napate Nirsakan Sarikha Amito Amikha Sadevam Prabhaham Ajaham Ajaham Tvaprasad. Waheguru. Bhagavati Chan